Hi, I'm Garmbreak1, and this is Midgardia's Cool Crowdfunding Show. I'm here today with Ralph. How's it going?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
How
How
are
are
you?
you?
I'm doing pretty well. It's a beautiful day here. You're here to tell us about Cleanup Crew, so why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So Cleanup Crew is a Lumen game. So it's based on the Lumen system by Spencer Campbell. And as you might have heard earlier in the show from other people, Lumen is a fast-paced power fantasy where you have really quick combat. It was designed for that based on video games. Like, for example, Destiny was the big inspiration for the Lumen system. And Cleanup Crew takes the system and transports it into somewhat 1750-ish Europe, mid-Europe. In my head, it's the south of Germany. I say in my head because I'm not too specific about the system, but the overall feel has that um, before the Age of Revolution kind of European feel to it. And in the game, you play as cleaners that help the so-called soul detectives. Now I have to go on a little tangent because there is some backstory to it. The soul detectives are people. They are actually magic users. They can use magic, but they're hiding because of the witch hunt and all that stuff that happened 2 centuries before. And the soul detectives help to, or they find lost souls that just for some reason are stuck in between and can't cross over, and help them cross over. Usually there's some unresolved issue, and they help out with some form of magic. I created a game last year called Marianne Soul Detective, which is based on a local folk tale from my hometown. And it plays through 5 stages where Marianne learns how to become a soul detective. Now, in Cleanup Crew, the soul detectives are a story element. The soul detectives, they will call the cleanup crew when one of their cases with a lost soul gets messy. Messy case, they need someone to clean it up. Those cases get messy when some entity is also after those lost souls and try to capture them, and they will send their minions in waves, and then the soul detective is just not strong enough to defeat them. They call the cleanup crew. The cleanup crew comes, and we go through multiple waves of combat that also include the 5 elements of East Asian philosophy. It's basically all of my games. And there is a magic system that works with that, which is quite unique. And yeah, you kick serious monster ass.
So it's somewhere between like the Shinigami from Bleach and like Ghostbusters in the 1750s. That about fair?
Yeah, yeah. Also, so a little bit Hellboy because they're also kind of hidden, but in the middle of the city, that kind of stuff. So yeah, those elements were a big inspiration. Yes.
Right on. So I know that one of the major differences between this and the other Lumen games is the integration of your signature Wuda dice. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So the element die system, Wuda, um, is based on the 5 elements of East Asian philosophy. We have wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And we have, since we usually use 6-sided dice, we also have Chi, which is the omnipotent energy that powers everything. I'm using that in Cleanup Crew for the magic system. So the idea is that the cleaners are not magic users, but they have energy blasters where they can blast shockwaves of chi to kill those monsters, but they can do more. And this is the really, really fun part of Cleanup Crew. In video games, when you kill a monster, they drop something. Usually it's something like ammo or a health kit or something like that. In Cleanup Crew, they drop either one of the 5 elements or chi. If you pick up chi, that's health, so you regain health points. If they drop one of the 5 elements, you can use those elements if you have the right equipment. Just like in a video game, if you collect specific ammo, you can only use it with a specific gun. The same is here. We have 2 options where we can use those elements. One is Paper Talisman, basically spells. You might know Paper Talisman from anime shows like Sailor Moon. Sailor Mars is the one who always uses those little paper thingies
Yeah.
that straighten up and does some magic move. That's the idea here for the spells. The spells are again based on the 5 elements. So for example, the element water is attributed to calmness and stillness. So one of the spells could be silence. So I have my paper talisman, I collect one of the water elements, I combine them, I place the spell somewhere, and to activate it, I blast it with my energy blaster. That would create an area of silence. I picked a random spell because that's the beauty of the spell system. We have a table of the elements with their aspects and words associated with it, and the players can just come up with spells on their own and say, oh, I have a paper talisman that does this, right? In the game, I have a whole bunch of sample spells and also progression of those spells. If I get better, I can make those spells better to have, for example, a bigger area effect or a bigger effect on a specific monster, things like that. But this is how the magic system works. The other option where I can use these elements are my weapons. In the book, I have 5 sample weapons that go from a stake gun that literally shoots wooden stakes, which is very effective against vampires. But it uses magical wooden stakes, basically. So it's not just a gun that shoots stakes. You power it with the wood element to make it a magical attack, because all those monsters are magic, basically. So you need to attack them on a magical basis. There's a holy water gun. There is a flamethrower. So yes, it's fun to play with those ideas of the elements, and the drop system was just perfect to bring that in a different way, in a way that was just something nothing has seen before yet.
Right. Only magic can defeat magic, right?
Yes.
And yeah, so like with the paper talismans, if I was trying to prevent some monsters from getting through a door, I could say that I have like a paper talisman for fortify and use metal to fuel that, basically. That the
Yes.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah. That's perfect. Like it's a system, and I mean the group can decide if how difficult they want to make it for the cleaners, if those paper talisman would be something they want to have as a go-to. So you have blank paper talisman, you say something and that's on it, and then you combine it. Or you could say, no, we have the call from the soul detective that says, oh, I suspect there is, I don't know, a vampire and some minions. Vampires are a little bit tougher, so there would be a boss fight in the end. And then I would gear up accordingly. Now, since there are 5 elements, I could split up the different weapons among the group. So I would, let's say I take a flamethrower and a paper talisman for wood. So I have 2 elements, but that would limit myself in the battle if I say I decide beforehand what I have, which changes the gameplay a little bit. I've tried out both versions. I prefer the tougher version because it creates the situation where you kind of scramble for elements at some point. You bring some with you, as base ammo. Otherwise, it's a little bit too slow in the beginning. Um, but yeah, it turns into more fun because you're like, oh, there's so much water around. Where's the wood? Where's the wood?
Yeah, so if you have it prepared in advance, it's more of a tactical kind of like experience. More like Rainbow Six Siege as opposed to like the Devil May Cry esque antics of just kind of freeforming it.
Yes.
Right on. Both of which are obviously quite appealing in their own ways.
I like the situation where you have to be prepared before you go into the battle, but I completely understand just going all out freeform. I mean, it's part of the game. It's a power fantasy. The players in Lumen games are supposed to feel overpowered, like in video games where they just wade through waves of enemies and just kill stuff. So having the strategic element is something that I enjoy, but is not necessary for a Lumen game.
Right, right. So speaking of our wonderful player characters, are there like different distinct classes for them?
Yes, again, there are five. Uh, Everything comes down to fives at some point. I uh, base them a little bit on the standard idea. In Lumen games, you have three aspects. Those three aspects are called in Cleanup Crew power, passion, and patterns, because I'm also a sucker for alliterations. Power is straightforward, it's force. When someone uses force in their actions in a combat, that would be anything that is forceful. If you would transfer those elements into a more role play situation, what we're going to talk later about when we talk about downtime a little bit, power would be that a powerful character would also speak in a powerful voice or would be very sure of themselves, but that would be a role play choice. Passion is anything that has to do with speed or quickness. That could be quickness of the feet, quickness of the hand, but also quickness of the mind, like fast talking characters. And the third pattern is a methodical, logical way to approach things, either in battle through tactics or in a roleplay situation to be a little bit more methodical and thought out. The five characters are the Wiegand, which is an old German version of the Weigand, the guard warrior. That's a powerful character. Then we have the Falk. That's based on the bird Falke in German, which is a fast bird of prey. So this is a passion character. The third one is the Scaphan, which is basically a scribe. Um, oh, sorry, mix it up. The third one is the Knobel, which is basically a tactician. He uses his brains mostly. And then we have two special characters that are not specific when it comes to those three aspects, but have some other specialties. The Scaphan is basically a scribe. They have the specialty that they carry two paper talisman, two variants of paper talisman instead of one. So they are the ones writing the paper's talisman, and because of that, they can do a little bit more with them. That's basically, you could play it as a bookworm that says, oh, let's see what happens out there. So there's some fun in just imagining that. And the last one is a spook, which is basically a saved lost soul that says, you know what, I don't need to cross over. I'm still here, but I'm going to help you because I think I have some skills. They have a very amazing ability. They can phase shift, so they can just shift into a different plane, travel somewhere far, and just reappear and punch a monster, which is super fun to play because it's annoying for the GM, but it's also it's just great The spook, however, only has 4 health points, so they are easy to go down,
Compared
which
to the
is a little
normal.
bit.
Yeah, compared to the normal
Yes,
like 8, looks like. Somewhere
the
between
weekend
there.
has, yeah,
Oh yeah.
and otherwise they're around so 5, 6, 7. So the spook with 4 health points, um, that's 3, 4 hits by a monster. That's not that much. So that's an interesting turn for them. But they can always jump out of the action by phase shifting. So they also have a move where they basically are immune for a round to specific attacks. So they have some stuff that help them with that disadvantage. That's also fun to imagine what it looks like. So there's always the option in there to describe something and bring some flavor in the game.
Right on. I quite like the sound of the scafan.
Yes, I like that one too.
I go out in the world and get my face punched in by monsters. Then write about it.
Yes.
So you mentioned downtime, so why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. Downtime is the time in between the messy cases. In many Loom games, that's not defined at all because the Loom games are about kicking ass, well, or killing monsters or killing enemies. Um, but I like to have some balance between that high octane fight scenes and then something else. We've mentioned anime before, so downtime would basically be that beach episode after a big fight before something bad happens. So that's the idea of downtime. Um, I included it as an opportunity for the players to have some role play and to get to flesh out their characters a little bit more. That also means that Cleanup Crew is something that is set up where you can play campaigns, where you actually see not just uh, character growth in mechanics, but also a character growth when we think about their personalities, about their characteristics, and those kind of things. During the downtime, like I said, it's up to the players to come up with something. Um, when I GM, I just take a sit back and say, okay, so what do you want to do? I would probably give them some hints, but it also allows for story arcs. So you could just say we're doing a one shot. We have one BBEG at the very end, the big bad. Or you could say, hey, let's set up a story arc and then just determine how many messy cases it should be weekly. So the GM can prepare a little bit for the situation. And then the downtime would be what happens in between. They might be looking for some additional clues. So this would be an opportunity to go back to the scene of the messy case and maybe find out a little bit more, or just have a good time with each other. Um, some groups keep downtime to a short narrative, 5-10 minutes, where they talk, oh, let's do this, blah, blah, blah. Others really go into it and do some nice scenes, and that's fine. I mean, every table is a little bit different, right?
Yeah, for sure. So that's your like, after the battle you go for a couple of brews if it's like the shorter kind, or it may be a
Yes.
full hot spring episode.
Yeah.
Right on. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up while we're here? I think we haven't talked about curses.
Exactly. So in most of the Lumen games, the characters don't really die. I mean, character death is always on the table, but in Cleanup Crew, it's set up in a way if a character goes down and has 0 health left, they either have a short amount of time available to be healed by one of their teammates, or they're usually a ring or some sort of jewelry. Their magic gate activates and transports them back into headquarters. This takes you out of the fight, which usually is not a problem. If a player goes down and nobody's around that can heal them or has spells left, it's usually somewhat at the end of the fight anyway. So being taken out doesn't really hurt you too much. It's not like in the dragon game where if you go down, the only thing you can roll is your death rolls and that's it. And then you wait for half an hour for one round of battle to go. No. It's pretty quick that you're back in the game. Now, if you go down, the monster that brought you down, they have a preferred element, and based on that element, you are cursed. These curses, before you go into the next messy case, you basically roll a die. If you roll a 5 and a 6, you are actually in control of that curse and it can do something really cool. So there is a 1/3 chance that you actually get something out of it. But if you roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, the curse is in control of you and then something bad happens. So for example, if you are cursed with something that creates fear, a 5 or a 6 could say that a certain type of monster is afraid of you, which is great. They might be paralyzed and you get a free hit. But if the curse takes over you, it might say that you have a limited movement, for example, because you're stifled, or whenever you get too close to a monster, you are paralyzed for a round or something like that. So it can have some serious implications there. But again, it's based on the 5 elements, and you can come up at the table in the moment what that curse looks like and tailor it to the game. So that's very fun. It doesn't happen as often as I wish as a GM, because I think the curse is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's a neat mechanic. It makes death still impactful without just being like, yeah, your character's dead. Roll up a new one. 3d6
Yes.
straight down.
Yeah. What I really like about the whole situation with there's no character death, or mechanically there's no character death. If you play a longer arc with 5, 6, 7 messy cases, and in the final fight somebody goes down, that would be a great moment to say, I'm done with that character anyway. I think that's it. And then it's actually meaningful, because then the player could decide, no, I think right now in that point of the story, it makes sense for the story, and then the character death actually means something. And that's beautiful, I think.
Yeah, as long as it's, like a climactic kind of death instead of, getting knifed in an
Yeah.
alley by a goblin. Yeah, are there any other elements of Cleanup Crew where it's like kind of extended universe that you'd like to talk about?
I think I covered everything. Do you have something in mind?
Uh, Not particularly, but oh yeah, I should mention this is not a Kickstarter, which is our usual fare. This is itch funding over on itch, currently sitting at 17%. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. That's the whole reason we're here, right? um, I've been doing itch funding now for the 3rd time. I never touched Kickstarter. I always had some issues with it, but recently we had Kickstarter make an announcement that they are moving to blockchain, and right now it's not, or at the moment of recording, for me at least, it's not entirely sure what that means. Does it mean cryptocurrency, or does it just mean a different sort of security? So yeah, for me, it feels like Kickstarter is doing a move that makes them more popular in a certain group of customers. and that's not necessarily the group of customers that I have, so I never really bothered with that. Itch funding is basically the same as Kickstarter. The only difference for me when I do itch funding project is I have the product ready to go. So for Cleanup Crew, if you get Cleanup Crew now, I call it the early bird version. It's the full product without the artwork. Right now I have a team of 6 artists that work on various illustrations. So in the front of Cleanup Crew, there is going to be an intro mission, just like in a video game where you learn how to work with the controls. It's going to be an intro mission. You read the story, you get introduced to the lore, then there's an easy fight, and it tells you press button B to do that, or press button X to do that. Basically, so you don't have your character yet. You go through the story, it tells you now you roll some dice, and we're just doing a power roll. And the next action, you do a passion roll, then you do a roll where you shoot something with an energy blasters, and you go through the motions to learn the individual moves, which aren't as hard as at all. I mean, it's a game that you literally can pick up by yourself without any knowledge before. But in that intro mission, we will have 6 different scenes that are illustrated by our 6 different artists. So each artist illustrates one of the scenes. Then we have illustrations of the 5 cleaners and 7 monsters. Now this is an odd number. Originally, I thought I have 5 artists and 5 scenes and 5 monsters illustrated. But then one of the artists that I contacted got back to me after I filled all the slots of artists and said, hey, this sounds really cool. And I said, I really want you on my team. So I said, how about we do an extra scene? And instead of a cleaner, you do 2 monsters. And they said, that sounds awesome. I like monsters. So yes, that's why we have 5 cleaners, 7 monsters, 6 scenes.
Well, at least the cleaners and monsters are still prime numbers, so there's that.
That's always good, yes. And right now, 4 of the artists are done with their work. So I'm waiting on 2 more artists. I'm already working on the layout for the beautiful version. And the plan is to have it released around Christmas, the artisan version. Maybe New Year, depending on how quick we get the artwork in. I don't want to make any pressure. I asked the artists when they can set their time, and they all mentioned the time frame they had. I gave them a lot of freedom. I had some particular ideas about the cleaners, and I said, but go with it. Run with the project. Try to figure out what that means for you. And that was just the best thing I could ever do, because they came up with stuff I never came up with. That's awesome. That's what I like, when you leave those gaps in your games, those holes that players or the artists can just fill it with cool stuff. I'm also changing a few things. For example, my first artist that did the artwork for the Rumpelstilzchen included a tail with a stinger, and that's gonna be a special attack for it now. So because we have something in the picture and I'm gonna use it. So I'm working with the artwork that I get as inspiration for the game that is basically done. So it's informs itself and goes around. So this is really cool. Currently, I haven't updated that on the game page yet. We do some math real quick. We are at 25%. I just hadn't updated that for, I want to say, 3 days. The last few days were just really, really good. partly because of the Dicebreaker article, where I got a little shout out for Cleanup Crew. The Dicebreaker article was mainly about Lumen games, and I got a shout out, which was awesome. I did not know that. Somebody contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm writing an article," and I said, "Yeah, sure. Here's the game. If you have questions, ask me." I went on a really, really long explanation of my game, and then Friday morning, I got up, I checked my Twitter and was wondering why all those notifications are there, and then I realized I'm in an article. That was the best day.
That rocks.
Yes, that's just awesome.
And it's nice to see the spotlight being put on Lumen, because there's a lot of really cool stuff there.
Oh, definitely. I actually used 4 different Lumen games in my English class. I'm an English teacher. I teach grade 9 and grade 10 English. And in my grade 9 class, I created a unit that goes the entire semester. Uh, we read games. I don't give them any instructions. So I gave them 4 different Lumen games. Of course, my own, because I created it. Blazing.
It's nice.
Our farm becomes the battlefield, which
Nice.
is a wonderful anti-capitalist critique, and Illuminum: The Painted World, which is just such an amazing idea. You basically play as the illustrations in those ancient books that are in the bookmarks and fight against things that destroy books, like bookworms and stuff like that. So it's weird to wrap your head around in the beginning, but once you're in there, it's like awesome. So the students read the games, explained the games to each other, then they played the games for 2 weeks, like 4 or 5 sessions to get a feel for it. Then they had to write a creative story about what happened in their game from the point of view of their character. And after that, after they experienced working with the game, I said, okay, now in pairs, you create games, role-playing games. It's 2 classes who are doing that, me with a co-teacher, so we have in total 40 students, and today is our WolfCon. Sadly, we can't have that public because Corona, but in our school we have 2 hours where we're sitting in the cafeteria, the only place where you can eat foods, and we present 20 games to the rest of the school. So that's really cool.
Nice.
And Lumen was just the perfect choice for it because it's so easy to pick up.
Yeah, nice. You'll probably see a lot of stuff, inspired by like Genshin Impact, League of Legends, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how
Yeah,
popular League is over there these days, but
yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's role playing games can be a wonderful educational tool.
Oh, definitely, yes.
Well, I think that about wraps it up.
Yeah, that was a pretty long talk, I think.
Well, it's been great talking to you. And for those of you watching at home, there are links below. Please go check out Cleaning Crew. Seriously consider buying it. There's also links to the Patreon that supports this program, all that fun stuff. Comment, like, you all know the thing. Have a good night, everybody.
See you. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you. Night.